everybody. Glad to be with you again. It's been a little while since we've connected via this venue. So glad to be back. And it's a special time for us here in the city to really have an opportunity to speak with one of our native sons and one of our best and brightest, who's done so many tremendous things in this industry and really is a tried and true testament of what you can do with hard work. It certainly helps to be very smart. It certainly helps, I think, to have the dedication that my guest has had. And so I'm just really happy and excited we have Saladin Patterson with us today. And, known him for a number of years, and it's really been a great opportunity to watch him rise through the entertainment world. And when I think about, what he has done, I think about the credits that he has as executive producer for Frasier, what he's done with the FX comedy series, Dave, The Last OG with Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish, and even working on The Cops, starring Louis C.K. and Albert Brooks. So when we think about all those type of shows, you're talking with someone who's a heavyweight and who's a major player and someone who's respected in this field. And I think all of us, can appreciate excellence in this. And, even got some other credits that I forgot, Big Bang Theory, Psych, 2.5 Men, Bernie Mac Show, which was definitely one of my favorites, and even Frasier, which is a spinoff of the old Cheers. So, when we think about, I guess, from my standpoint, the work that has been put together, it's a established, excellent body of work that Saladin has done. And being a Montgomery native, he went to the wrong elementary school at Dalrata, should have gone to Vaughn Road, and he went to the wrong high school. He went to Lamp. He's too smart. But I think there's some other reasons why he didn't go to Jeff Davis High School growing up here. But truly, someone that has, put their education to good work. All that, and he wasn't a trained writer, so I'm interested to kind of hear about that. I mean, he's got a bachelor's in electrical engineering from MIT, and he did get the one school right. He went to Vanderbilt University, got his master's like I did. So we do have that part in common. But no, I think the school part was just an afterpiece where he's concerned. I mean, this brother's been smart all the way back. So it is really great to have him here, and certainly to be able to talk to him about this upcoming show, The Wonder Years, the reboot. And so many of us, remember that show growing up, and so many of us really, can point back to certain episodes when that show was at its peak. Fred Savage, who I know is working on this project as well, was the lead character. So this is great. It's going to be fun, and I think it'll give us a chance to talk about some other things that we want to do here in Montgomery. And so great to have with us again, native son, a homeboy, good friend, Saladin Patterson, and we thank his wife Chelsea and his kids for letting him join us just for a little bit today. So Saladin, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Mary. You know what? I'm glad that you landed on the Vanderbilt commonality, so you wouldn't have to keep dissing all my other schools, man. But no, it is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to get a chance to kind of sit and talk to you. It is an exciting time as we lead up to the premiere. But I've been looking forward to getting a chance to just kind of chat with you, man, and answer any questions you have, but kind of just share with you and your viewers, man, the folks of Montgomery, any kind of peek behind the scenes that may be interesting, and just kind of hearing about what this process has been like, and just to get a chance to also share with you my excitement for doing something that will not just mention Montgomery, but actually, be like a love letter to Montgomery in a way, which is kind of what I'm hoping this will also be.
Oh, that's great. I gave some of the high points of your background and all the shows you worked on in your career. If you would, and I'm going to touch on kind of growing up here, but just kind of give me a sense first on what you remember, growing up here in Montgomery, and kind of what some of your takeaways were from being a part of the community and
Right.
schools and all the things that the union folks experience here.
But look, as with most of us, in terms of our memories of growing up, I certainly have fond memories of Montgomery, the relationships I had, friends I had, the schools that you mentioned I went to. You skipped over Floyd.
I forgot Floyd. That's right.
For junior high, man. But but also, like I said, like we all do, I have memories of ups and downs, of challenges, of that adolescent period where you're trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do, and what you feel like you're the only one that's struggling with certain things, because we don't really have the perspective to know that in those adolescent years we're all trying to figure things out. We're all trying to search to figure out who we are. You feel kind of isolated, but I had good friends, had good family. So really what comes to mind now when I either think about how I grew up, or when I talk about it to other people, or even through work, when I try to express it through storytelling, I really lean on the values, the commonalities that we have growing up in the South, the common experiences, the things that I tend to lean towards, the things that bond us. Those things that when you go off to school like you did, and meet people from other parts of the country, which are great, but when you run across other people who you may not have known, but who at least grew up in the South or in similar geographic areas, there's that connection that you have because of those things that just come with growing up, when we did and where we did. So that's usually what I take away, man. Things learned, teachers, growing up in a time when teachers were really invest in you, not just if you're a good student. I had teachers who invested in me before I was a good student because they at least saw the potential, you know what I mean? And so that's a special thing, I think, that comes from growing up in the South when people are kind of really invested in the community and invested in all us being in this together, which some people would be surprised to hear me say that about growing up in the South, because people, assume certain things about the South that also, have truth to them, but it's not all of that. It's not all divisiveness. It's not all things that separate us. There are certain things that still transcended those differences. So that's kind of, what I hold on to from my experiences growing up.
So you mentioned teachers. Are there any, experiences there, just kind of, as you're going through the public schools here,
right,
that maybe you think back to, you said this kind of helped you kind of think, maybe even not then, kind of think about, your career and your capabilities in a different way, maybe than you had, even with the support at home or with the support from church and whatnot. Was there anything, from those teachers you kind of remember?
For sure, and there are a couple of things that kind of stand out to me that I tell when people ask me about my career path and what led, to me being a writer. I point out, the fact that so growing up in Montgomery, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and so like my middle school years, or elementary and middle school years, span like early 80s to 1990. I was class of 90 for high school. I certainly benefited, and I'll say benefited, even though I ended up going a different route. I benefited from the fact that there were teachers who saw that at that time I had, or I at least exhibited, a strength in like math, and and a strength in math and science, oh, that's my assistant Ola behind us. Hey, Ola.
How you doing?
She's making sure that I'm eating and doing things I'm supposed to, that I won't be passing out on set. She's taking care of me. But yeah, I had teachers who recognized that I showed a proficiency in math and science, and they would speak to me, hey, have you ever thought about engineering? Have you ever thought about going into this as a profession? I had a teacher, Miss Palmer, who was my 8th grade computer teacher, that taught us, I think we just called it computer at the time, but taught us basic, the computer programming language, basic. You had Miss Stubbs as an intro algebra teacher at Floyd, who really, kind of saw that I had some math skills. And so they were pointing out to me that, hey, there aren't a lot of Black males that go into engineering. And so, this is something you should kind of consider. And that made me realize, hey, that's something I could possibly do, and that created a reality for me that I didn't have any immediate role models who had done some of those things. Now, mind you, I am blessed. Both sides of my family were, both my parents were college educated, and my grandmother worked at Tuskegee Institute at the time in the Department of Engineering. So I had heard people say things about engineering, but I had teachers that made it a real thing to me. Like, hey, this thing that you seem to be enjoying now is something you can pursue. And that, I got to say, Mary Reed, directly affected me and making me say, hey, you know what? I think I can be an engineer if I wanted to, and I heard that the best school for engineering was MIT. I was like, well, you know what, man? Maybe I'll go there, and it was just that teachers really instilling in me that belief that you can do it if you work hard at it, and so I attribute that introduction and the fueling of that, of that flame and that passion to the teachers who really took the time to kind of speak that, to me. And like I said, even though I eventually, went away from engineering as a career path, man, I gotta say, so many of the things that I've been able to do, the doors that have been open to me, are because of that initial path, man. And that, that goes back to just teachers caring about what they were doing. Bottom line.
Yeah. That's great. When in that process did you know you wanted to get into the entertainment industry?
So it was, so you mentioned the Vanderbilt of it all. It was at Vanderbilt that I kind of got really interested in in just how TV was made. Didn't know a lot about the entertainment industry. Growing up in the South, that's one of those things where unless you know people or have family members who are involved in entertainment, you don't really know that much about how it works unless you have a real passion that's going to cause you to seek it out. And I will say, like, I see in hindsight how even before I had that awareness of it, there were still people in my path who kind of inspired me and at least planted those seeds. Like we're talking about teachers. I would say the educator that probably has had the biggest influence on me in my life growing up was Mary Joyce Jester, who was the head of the LAMP program when I was growing up. I think she was one of the founding heads of the LAMP program, to tell you the truth, I think from its inception. And, by the grace of God, Ms. Jester saw potential in me and knew that I just needed to be exposed to things outside of my current experience. And I remember when I decided to leave engineering and pursue, at the time it was psychology at Vanderbilt, and then from there I discovered writing. I remember talking to Ms. Jester about it and her saying, Saladin, as a kid, when you were in middle school and high school, I saw that you were also a skilled writer. Also, you made good grades in English as well as math, but you were just so determined that math was your route. No one was going to get in your way. But, I listened to that, and that makes me also appreciate the English teachers I had who still took their job so seriously, to where they made sure that I was getting the exposure to literature, the exposure to writing and structure that I didn't even realize at the time would be beneficial to me the way it is now, So it all comes back to that. But like I said, it was in grad school when I was at Vanderbilt that I kind of, having left engineering, it kind of freed my mind to say, okay, if God will let you do whatever it is, will let me do whatever it is I'm supposed to do, let me kind of figure out what that is now. And I just went on this kind of self journey of exploration and really got interested in learning how they make television, and really, as I dove into it, really that interest turned into like a true passion for that form of expression and storytelling.
That's great. those stories in terms of how people get to where they are, I think are so important for, people to understand that it's not always a linear path, right? Sometimes you have to take some different turns and twists where that's concerned. And, but it's through kind of keeping what I would say is a sense of, core values and principles that you have in whatever it is you do. And then sometimes, you get those opportunities. Now, having said that, when I think about the Wonder Years and I think about, this being a reboot, can you speak to any similarities between Dean Williams, who's the protagonist in this show, and maybe your growing up and maybe that of your family? Did you kind of incorporate some of that into what Dean is experiencing in the show?
I certainly did. Mary, it's one of those things. There's an old adage that says, "Write what you know." And at the end of the day, I have found that to be the most, empowering advice that a writer can be given and then give. And for something such as the Wonder Years, which by design is a first-person narrative, where it's someone remembering, recollecting through nostalgia his experiences growing up, it is important to be able to tap into that in a personal way. So when Lee Daniels Entertainment, who was the production company, Lee was the producer that had the rights to the original Wonder Years, when they approached me to kind of come up with a contemporary take, but still set in 1968, and when 20th Century Fox TV, the production company, the studio behind it, came to me as well, what helped me wrap my mind around that daunting task of reimagining something, as you alluded to, as influential as the Wonder Years, what helped me wrap my head around it was them being okay with me personalizing it. And so it certainly then meant me thinking, now again, like I said before, you and I are of the same generation, which is not the generation that was 12 in 1968. But I have, when I think about my family members, my aunts and uncles who were of that age, my mom and dad who were young adults in that age, and just the family stories that we have, that really opened up that world to me in terms of understanding how to be a window to what those experiences would have been like for a Black family. And then in terms of the 12-year-old protagonist, yes, he's 12 in 1968, but one of the great things about the Wonder Years, the original, and something that we're also emulating with this reimagining of it, is those experiences that we have in adolescence when we're 12, those coming of age experiences, your best friend, your first crush, how you see your family, how you look up to your father figure, whomever that may be, how you kind of understand the world around you. Those are universal experiences at their core in terms of our American experience, and those things transcend generations, right? So a part of the appeal of this show is, even though it's specifically set in 1968, 12-year-old in Montgomery, Alabama, when we really capture what it feels like to have that nostalgia and wonder of those experiences of your early childhood and adolescence, when we really capture that, that is something that everyone can relate to, because that's a commonality we have from our American experience, and that's tapping into that vein is what kind of breaks down some of those barriers that allows something like a TV show to kind of cross over some lines that oftentimes we use to divide ourselves, right? So that is like what the me of it all, I would say. That's how that's channeled through the Wonder Years. It's through the experiences that I had growing up that are going to be the same or very similar to your experiences growing up. Things that we both had to go through, and that most people would have to have gone through just as a part of us maturing, and so that's the part that I'm tapping into from my own personal experiences. The specificities, though, those are things that I'm tapping into from the stories from, like I said, my aunts and uncles, my mom and dad, my friends and their family members who were of age during that time. So it's all kind of mixed together to be able to generate these stories.
Oh, that's great. And I think it's helpful for us to kind of hear again the backstory and how a writer thinks, the creative process a little bit, what goes into, shows that we see, whether that be on, traditional networks. Now things are streaming, of course,
Right.
And they're done so many different ways. But that is helpful. You know, I know when we talk, we discussed doing some filming in Montgomery, and you're doing some of that here. Talk a little bit about your thought process about maybe trying to incorporate real places here in Montgomery that you remember back in the day, as well as people that are actually here into this great idea called the Wonder Years, and bringing it forward. Talk about kind of Montgomery as a place and why that was important for you to do.
Gotcha. So, it all starts with, like I said, the writing what as being something that kind of will make your writing lend itself to authenticity, And so for something that's supposed to be a personal journey, I have found that the grounded reality of the stories and the characters and things like that really give a show like this is strength. And so that makes you want to lean into the specificity of it, real places, real people. Names change. This is Disney, but mind you, but real people still. That's the inspiration for the characters. And so, to me, starting with the reality of what my experiences were and the places that I navigated, the places my family navigated, was only going to make the show stronger. And so, setting it in Montgomery was something that not only made it personal to me, it really gives us a good backdrop for this family, a Black middle-class family in the late 1960s. They had to deal with all the social things that would have been going on and economic things that have been going on, in this country, but having to deal with it in the South, which was a hotbed in some ways, or at least a focal point for some of those things that were going on. Felt like it was going to really lend itself to specific storytelling for these characters and for this family. And so, for the Montgomery of it all, I wanted it to ring true. I wanted people who, like you said, who were familiar with Montgomery during that time to say, "Oh yeah, I remember that place," or that's true, that rings true. But it's this weird thing about storytelling. Even if it's not something you were familiar with personally, the fact that it's based on truth still carries a weight and a power. The actors portray it a different way when they know it's based on real people or real places. So because of that, from early on, when I was having my conversations with 20th Century Fox TV, the studio, or with ABC, the network, once they bought the idea, I emphasized how important it was to me to set it in Montgomery, and to really let Montgomery be a character in this show. And they embraced it as well. We're in an interesting kind of stage of television. You mentioned, the proliferation of streaming networks and things like that, just how it's different from when it was just 4 networks, or you and I may be old enough to remember when it was just 3 networks. I don't want to get right.
Yeah.
But so
hey look, I had to have been, speaking of Wonder Years, now this may not be a part of the show, but feel free to incorporate it. When you were the last one to get cable in school, man, I mean that was like the worst. I'm the only one who doesn't have all these channels.
And you can't talk about stuff. Yeah, I know. My mama was like, man, Saladin, 4 channels is enough. You're not watching all of them anyway.
Anymore.
Exactly. We were the last to get. I was the last to get cable. I was the last to get called waiting. Tell you.
Look, I'll compete with you on that one, because I can promise you the Reed household was like, you know what? If I'm on the phone, I don't want nobody interrupted.
Exactly. They'll call back.
You might be missing.
Oh my goodness, yeah, all that, and all that's going to be in the show. Trust me. But so there's so many more outlets now for creative content, to where the networks and streaming channels have really started to put a value and a premium on storytelling that's authentic, that really comes from a singular point of view. So ABC was actually welcome to the idea of me making Montgomery a specific character, because they realize that audiences respond to that. So, when people see the pilot, they'll certainly hear places mentioned. They'll see, baseball is a big part of the pilot and will be a big part of our main character. They'll see on the jerseys, places that they'll recognize that, are in Montgomery now still. We'll reference stores, and neighborhoods even, and so it helps me with the creative process because, like I said, starting from that place of truth just helps me ground the stories I'm telling and the characters and the experiences, and the things I'm pulling from, memories I'm pulling from. So, I look forward to hearing people who, like you said, who recognize and know these things, saying, "Oh, I see you mentioned this. I see you mentioned that. I remember this. I remember this." And we're actually going to shoot in Montgomery for a week in October. A couple episodes we have that kind of lent themselves to Montgomery at the time that we wanted to actually see the actual Montgomery. We're going to shoot during the National Fair, because that was a big deal for us growing up, and we're also gonna shoot some stuff that will. I don't want to give away too much stuff. That's why I'm being careful, but I want people to watch. But we're gonna shoot some places that you'll recognize that existed then at the time as well. Just again, because we want to show that authenticity, and we kind of want to show some stuff in Montgomery that people haven't seen. There's plenty of stuff people have seen in Montgomery, but there's some stuff some everyday life stuff, that they haven't seen. So looking forward to being able to make that a part of the show as well.
No, I think that is great. And one of the things I wanted to end with is, you and I have talked about how do you do more, production here. One of the things I think I shared with you was, after I got elected, there were some, mutual connections with the Atlanta film industry and Tyler Perry Studios and whatnot, who tried to get us, connected there. And, you were kind of explaining to me some things, prior to this project. And I think even when Will Smith and Antoine Fuqua's film Emancipation decided they were not going to film in Georgia because of their protests of some of the laws that were passed there restricting voting, I reached out to kind of see if we could get in that conversation, and you were gracious enough to connect me with those folks and to say, hey, here's who you need to talk to, and maybe there's an opportunity. But we found out there were some things that Louisiana had that we don't have, but we also found out, that there's some opportunity for us to create a better and stronger film and TV division, whether it be with the city and the state, because those are jobs, those are creatives who do so much more in the community. They're bright-minded people like yourself who are from here, get a chance to come back, whether it's you, whether it's Octavia Spencer. I mean, so many of you guys, make us proud here for the work that you've done. Give me a sense, if you're the culture advisor to the mayor, you're the film and TV advisor to Stephen Reed, and you say, hey Steve, let me just take y'all to the side and tell me, tell you a few things that you guys ought to do. Let me know, because it seems as though with Atlanta growing so much, and again, you shared with me that it's the second largest, production site outside of Hollywood, which I just thought was New York City. Right. I had no idea it was Atlanta, and the economic impact of all the things that spin off of that. I think with our proximity to Atlanta and with the type of talent, and now people like yourself in, decision-making positions, we want to put ourselves in the discussion, to be able to host and to be able to bring those type of events as part of economic development, but as part of showing off what Montgomery is now, and how we can really leverage that. So be as harsh on me as you need to be. Tell me, hey, here's what you need to kind of start doing, or, you and city and county, state leaders need to start thinking about, so that, maybe the next time around, we can be ready for an opportunity such as this, or one that's even bigger and better.
Gotcha. Great question, and it's a back and forth discussion too, that I look forward to us continuing to have, man. So look, some of it, Mary Reed, you know better than anybody else. Like, Hollywood is an industry, right? And in any industry, money talks. So a large part of that is looking at how other places like Atlanta, Louisiana, I think Wilmington, North Carolina right now, past few years, there, Albuquerque, New Mexico at one point was a destination, but it was all because they started off with tax incentives, luring Hollywood away from LA. They call it runaway production in LA because it's production running away from LA, which has its own challenges because of saturation, expense more than anything else. So of course, at some level, it's about making it financially attractive to the studios and networks and things like that to say, hey, put your production dollars here, and you'll get more bang for your buck than you get someplace else. Okay, but as you mentioned, it can't just be that. Because there has to be infrastructure, there has to be things like that. So I'll say, and I think honestly, Mayor Reed, not as the cultural advisor to the mayor's office for these next 3 minutes, my advice would be honestly encourage you to keep doing the things that you're already doing, like because you kind of touched upon the important things. A lot of it is about knowledge and exposure, letting people know that, hey, Montgomery's open for business, and this is what we have to offer. Like, LA became the center point of entertainment for a few reasons. Weather was one of them, and the fact that you could shoot there year round, didn't have to shut down for rain or snow and things like that. But also, there's a geographical advantage Montgomery has that LA doesn't have. Montgomery, like Atlanta, can look like other places. Sometimes easier than LA can look like other places, right? So you lean into that, and that has to go hand in hand with some of the more artistic things, some of the storytelling elements that as we have more and more people like, myself, Ava DuVernay, who shot Selma, there, who are from the South, telling more stories about people in the South, then getting the chance to show those stories in the South. People see the beauty. People see the geographical diversity. People see not just landmarks, but just people see visually what shooting something in the South can do to help your product stand out from the clutter right now. They're like something like 600 TV shows that you can watch right now. So anything that helps you stand out is great. So, leaning into Montgomery's strength in that way. The fact that shooting, I won't just say Montgomery, I say Alabama, as well, because, it kind of comes hand in hand. But the fact that, come to Montgomery, you're 2.5 hours away from a beach, so you can also, shoot those things. You can go up north and, hour and a half to be in the mountain area, you know what I mean? Probably can't find desert, but you can certainly find, lakes and things like that, that you can't necessarily see if you shoot in LA or New York even. So leaning into those sorts of things as a selling point certainly is helpful. But, and I know you and I had this discussion as well, it's also about infrastructure. It's also about, having populations of skilled technicians that you need for production, for in terms of crew member, in terms of your camera department, your art department, your production design department, your construction, building, things, all those sorts of skilled labor, labor people, that can compete with the skilled organized labor that other cities have been able to build up. That's just as key as anything else, because you can make it affordable for a production to come here, but that production has to be able to find people who can deliver the quality product, right? And there are various ways of doing that. Montgomery has the benefit of cost of living. You can attract people to Montgomery who want to get more bang for their buck in terms of their lifestyles and living and things like that. You can pull them from Atlanta. Atlanta is so expensive right now, almost as expensive as LA is in certain places. So that creates, an opportunity to disrupt for a place like Montgomery, because you have geographic proximity, right? But you can then offer, you can offer people who are willing to relocate. Hey, if you're willing to live in Atlanta, why not live in Montgomery? We have access to almost the same things, more value in what you get. So that's one thing, but also talking to the local schools and universities about developing their film and television programs to include degrees or certificates or certifications that apply to the film and TV industry in some of those trades, grip, electrical, things that can translate to work, because one thing about the entertainment industry is those are valuable skills, and once you have those skills, you are a useful commodity for productions if you live in a place where those productions come. So there's incentive for people who want to broaden their horizons in terms of their career options to then say, okay, there's program at Troy or Alabama State or AUM that has connections to the entertainment industry, to where if I get into this apprenticeship program or this training program, they will help me find job, and there's job security there, you know. So those sorts of things help you build that infrastructure of personnel and crew members and things like that, you know. And then it's about helping other people who have skill sets understand, hey, you can translate this skill set to production. Production still need accountants. They still need, you know, people who can handle money, you know, people who have finance backgrounds. And so it's like, hey, did you know you can apply this, you know, to the Hollywood industry, you know, and that may attract people. So all those sorts of things then allow you to say, hey, you bring your production to Montgomery. Not only do you have a great setting, you know, you also have a strong workforce that can support whatever your creative vision is, you know. And there are other creative ways to do that. You know, I tend to lean towards the appealing, you know, the training and the education and having partnerships with, like I said, schools and universities that can generate that workforce for you, you know, and then make it attractive for them to stay and not go to Atlanta, you know. So all those things, you know, happen, and it takes time, but other places did it, you know. I was surprised at how quickly these other places were able to kind of get up and running. So it's just about, you know, getting in line and being Montgomery's turn.
I hear you well. That is great advice. And it's the best kind of advice. We were free. We didn't have to,
exactly.
We didn't have to pay anybody. We got the homeboy discount on that.
Exactly.
So I definitely appreciate that, and I look forward to us continuing the conversation of how we lay this groundwork. I just feel like it's a natural for us as we try to diversify the economy here and try to expand our footprint, and just giving some of the feedback from you and others. I like where we sit and what the potential is, not only, as you said, for the city, but for the state. And I think that's a great thing to have. Yep. So look, you and I can keep talking all day, but we do want everybody to watch the Wonder Years as it comes on the 22nd, yep. Wednesday. And we want to let everyone know that, again, one of our own is behind this and is championing the city. And we certainly want to make sure that we do our part here and not only here in Montgomery, we want to spread the word. We want everybody on social media to push this, whether it's IG, whether it's TikTok, whether it's, you know, Facebook and Twitter, whatever it is you use. You know, look, like we were talking earlier, now all of our parents and grandparents have our call waiting. So call up the church folks, call them up and tell them again, you know, Saladin has been a great, you know, example and role model, I think, for so many of us. I won't even just say younger people. I mean, I speak as a peer, you know, watching them, you know, go down this track and just kind of the trails that he has blazed. And so I'm excited that Montgomery gets to be front and center this time around, but certainly appreciate all the work that you've done. Look forward to your next projects. And any way we can support, we're going to do that. So we're going to make sure we push this, not just tomorrow night, but we're going to push it throughout the season, and we're going to, you know, tweet about it. We're going to post about it. We're going to do everything we can to make sure our networks understand this, because we all now can be influencers. We may not get paid like social media influencers, right? But we can all be influencers and letting people know they ought to check this out, man. So thanks so much for taking time out. And I definitely look forward to the show and look forward to the season and look forward to catching up with you sometime real soon.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, man. I appreciate the hometown love, you know, and like I said, I want everybody to watch and just see the Montgomery that they love represented in a positive way. That's
great. Fantastic. Well, look, thanks so much. Get back to what you're doing. I know you're working on something important. Yeah. So, again, thanks so much for this. And we'll make sure to be supporting tomorrow. And we're going to keep talking about it all the way through the season.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Reed.
All right, so